Alright.
Hi, this is Abby Baird.
This is Derek Allen.
So, Derek's my boyfriend, and today we're going to talk about the stuff that we've gone over in psychology over the past semester. And the thing I want to start with is basically that we're hallucinating all the time. Even though, even if you're not under the influence of drugs.
Okay.
So basically, people hallucinate all the time because our brains are always predicting, what's going on. Like, if you hear, a sound or, I don't know, have you ever had...
Your brain kind of makes a subconscious solution.
Yeah,
to what
kind of
that is.
you know how, if you feel like your phone vibrates? Or,
Yeah.
If, and it's not actually vibrating, or you feel something like a water droplet on your face.
Even when it's not raining.
Basically, your brain has so your experiences kind of shape what you think happens to you. So let's say you hear a noise, like how our neighbors have had the smoke detector alarm going off for so long.
That
And
drove me nuts.
anytime I hear a beeping noise in the middle of the night, I just think it's a smoke detector. So that's just me hallucinating, even though it might not be that type of thing.
Just assuming that it could be that, a smoke detector.
Yeah, so anytime I hear that. And then also, it's kind of like how if you I don't know, do you have anything to add to that?
I don't think so. I understand what you're saying.
But another thing I feel like I have when I'm sleeping is it's in a actually I just read it. It's called Alice in Wonderland syndrome. It's when you fall asleep, you feel like you have your body is distorted. You feel maybe your hand is bigger than normal, or your hand is smaller than normal.
I've had that happen.
Proportions. I had that last night actually. It's you feel stuff is smaller or bigger, and
I've had that, especially if I drank some NyQuil or something before I went to sleep, or when I had my eyes closed right before falling asleep. I suddenly felt like my arm was just huge, just having bodily hallucinations.
Yeah, I feel it's typically drug induced. When it's an insomnia related thing, and I think it's because you're trying to go to sleep, but you can't, your brain, the stimulants or something that is affecting your brain chemicals is stopping you from shutting off your brain all the way to go to sleep. So it causes the perception to be off, I guess. I don't know.
Okay.
That's how I explain it. And also, another thing that I wanted to talk about was, so last night when I was taking a bath, so basically we read about this experiment. It was called the Ganzfeld experiment, and it's where you take goggles and you cut a ping pong ball in half, and you put them on top of the goggles, so all you see is white, and then you lay down on the couch, and then you take a red light, and it's supposed to be a red light because it's supposed to I don't know, make it uniform and so that you have no sensory input. And then also, you're supposed to have a white noise machine so that you're not disturbed by any sounds. And so I did that in the bath, and your brain naturally filters out things on a normal basis. You don't notice every little sound, because your brain kind of just says
There's a lot of things that happen around us every day that we don't notice.
Yeah, but one thing I noticed in the bathtub, because I was just, the curtain was all white and, the bathroom was all white, so, I was just staring at the ceiling in the bath, and like I was like half submerged in it, and I like noticed like how our light flickers, kinda.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't notice that normally, but like all I was staring at was the ceiling, so like
Okay.
I just noticed that.
Could you like hear it flickering, or you could see it?
I could just see it because my like half my ears were underwater, but my face was like poking out of the top of the water,
Okay.
kinda. So then I noticed like I don't know, I noticed the light, and then like I started to see the curtain move, probably because from the bath water,
Mm-hmm.
and it like made me think that someone was like messing with me. So then I got out of the bath because I got scared.
Okay. So your senses were going a little crazy, even though there was no stimuli there.
Yeah, kind of like that. I don't know, have you ever had that? Where like you're home alone?
Yeah, when I'm home alone, I can like swear I hear something happening downstairs. Or I swear I hear the TV on, or something like that.
Yeah, basically it's just your brain trying to like make sense of noises because you're so used to like people being around, and like
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, maybe like with this whole epidemic though, with the coronavirus, people staying home all the time, they might start like hallucinating more.
Yeah, because people aren't used to, I mean, some people are used to being in their houses all day, but a lot of people aren't. People that are used to working, 10 hours a day, that are now in their homes all day, it might be a sudden change to them. Like, major decrease in stimulus might start making them,
Hallucinate,
hallucinate a little.
go crazy.
Yeah.
And then also, on the drug side of hallucinating, I was telling you a couple of days ago about the book that I read
Mm-hmm.
about how they took like how this guy Huxley, he took peyote, which is like the Native Americans like version of acid,
Mm-hmm.
but its active ingredient is mescaline, and he basically like described like things that like scientists now know about like how the brain processes information,
Mm-hmm.
but he was able to take this drug, and like it allowed him to like see how brain processes work, like it's just like, so your brain, like how I was saying earlier, like your brain is constantly filtering things like out,
Mm-hmm.
filtering out things that like you normally don't pay attention to. But do you think it's like an evolutionary advantage to do that? Do you think it's an
Oh,
advantage?
well, yeah, we were evolved to survive. We were evolved to be able to see and hear the things that we only need to see and hear to be able to live in our environment. And we're like adapting more and more to it. And the environment is constantly changing with more people, more pollution, more activity, and just, overall changes. So that could just be like our brains and bodies adjusting to it.
So you think that like, you know how people say like we only access like 10% of our brain?
Mm-hmm.
Like do you think that the other 90% is like stuff we just naturally filter out?
Yeah, or stuff we only access when we need to.
Yeah. And do you think that like if we access it all at once, it would just be overwhelming?
Oh yeah. Like when people are on high stimulant drugs and they start getting paranoid or freaking out, that can be because it's too much for them at once or too much for them to handle. Or maybe it just all happening at once could be like a big shock to them to see it all at the same time.
Yeah. I think that overstimulation like could be like, well, it is relate. I think it is related to like the way that like each of us process things.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of the other things we learned was like people, it's like sensory processing disorder, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
it's also seen in like kids with like autism, how like they're like more sensitive to like loud noises
Mm-hmm.
and stuff. Like you know how like if like an autistic kid would, or like person would hear like a loud noise or like go to fireworks and
Mm-hmm.
like just freak out and like not be able to handle it. Or
Mm-hmm.
like have you heard of people who have like if they get touched they like it's super painful for them? or like the light is just too bright and they just can't like they can't process it in like a healthy way, I guess. Basically these people, they don't know like exactly what causes it for like sensory processing disorder, but they know that like it's related to people with autism.
Okay,
Like the
chemical
same
imbalance.
it's not even they just don't know. They do know that like certain brain structures and like in the back of the brain are like different, which process the information. But like one of the interesting things I found about that was like people who are like, I don't know, they're like emotional, or like people who are like overly like, I don't
sensitive.
know, sensitive to things. Like, do you think that they're like overly sensitive because of like a disorder, or do you think that it's like also an evolutionary advantage because like how they approach situations? Like think about somebody who's like overly sensitive to like people's emotions. Like, do you think that's like a good thing?
It probably depends on the situation. It might make someone more empathetic, someone a little more aware of how someone's feeling or what's going on, which can turn out good, but at the same time it could make someone more vulnerable or more weak or susceptible to like getting tricked or fooled or taken advantage of.
I think that, do you think that like people who are overly sensitive have like a sensory processing disorder, or do you think that like it's different? Like basically I'm asking, do you think it's like same, or do you think that they're just sensitive?
It could just be the way that their head works, whatever. It's just able to handle, just isn't able to handle as much. Kind of like how some people can just take more pain than others, or they can take, a harder hit than others. It's like that, but just, but like emotionally.
Do you think it has to do with like people, how their parents process information? Like, do you think it's like primarily genetic, or do you think it's like environmental also?
A lot of it could be environment. Like if you spend your whole life being inside your house, homeschooled, whatever, not around other people, and suddenly you're exposed to a large crowd of people, you might be like, whoa, never been in this before, or, could be a little bit of a combination of both. There's some people that are just naturally, just have social anxiety, or just very, or just introverted people that just don't enjoy the presence of large crowds or whatever, and some people love it. So I guess this could kind of depends on the person. Could be genetic.
So how would you explain how like people, if so you said like they're introverted typically, but do you think that like you could have somebody with this disorder who actually enjoys being out, but like extroverted, but can't because of how their brain works? Or do you think they all have to be introverts?
Let's say that they I mean, if you couldn't go out if you couldn't do it, you'd probably just eventually adjust to not enjoying it. If it was something that like if every time you went out in large crowds, whatever, and had a bad experience, you would not be someone who enjoyed it.
So you think that they're like mutually exclusive? Like you can't have both. Basically, you can't be extroverted and have this disorder.
Yeah, I would say so. Unless you were someone who kind of was like, I don't know if I'd call it bipolar or what, but you just had weird days where some days you just felt like going out. Some days you're feeling better than others, and then other days you just felt like staying in your house. Like it could be a mood thing, be a mindset thing. But most likely, I'd say if too much stimulus is too much for you, you're gonna be more of an introverted person. That's gonna be the way you are.
Alright. Well, that's a good point there. moving on to other types of like sensory processing.
Oh, if I go back to that, make one more point.
Yeah.
I guess it could be related. I guess maybe you were right. Maybe you could be a little bit of both. Like the idea of going out in large crowds and being around a bunch of people, but you just can't handle it. That could also be related to someone being allergic to peanut butter. Like someone could like the taste of peanut butter and think it's good, or like the taste of chocolate and think it's good, but they're allergic to it, and if they eat it, they're gonna die. But that doesn't mean that their taste buds don't like the taste of it. It
Yeah.
could be related to that, like, you know, someone maybe.
I like that analogy.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I like that analogy. Yeah, I was saying like maybe like also they could have like trauma, like how people have post-traumatic stress disorder, and they they have people. Well, I was watching Grey's Anatomy, but like how one of the doctors, whenever he would like stare at a ceiling fan, it would remind him of like the helicopters in like war he was in, and he would just snap into this like fearful, like aggressive, like personality. And like what if like these people weren't always sensitive to like certain sounds or stuff, but like a traumatic event like caused them to, like how they cope with it.
Oh yeah,
I guess I'm kind of talking about like what do you think like causes like people to have these disorders? Like, is it trauma? Is it just like how they were born?
A trauma definitely could like if something you did have a bad experience, that could definitely cause you to just subconsciously have your guard up whenever you get in that environment again, or like when you see something similar to like something that did happen. It could just make your brain put the guard up and for your own safety tell you like, hey, remember what happened last time you did this, get out of the situation, or something like that.
So you think it's kind of like a learned mechanism?
Yeah.
It could be like a learned way to like survive, like kind of like an evolutionary advantage.
Yeah. Just like if you got stabbed on a public bus before, you might like in a bad area, you might just from that point on always be afraid to get on a public bus in a bad area.
So would you say
Like,
that
you might
like fear?
And especially if it was a point where like your life almost got taken, your brain's like trying to do what it needs you to do to survive, so it's gonna, you know, subconsciously
So would you say that
make you fear that.
fear causes people to process things differently?
Oh yeah.
So I think another example that like that's interesting about like how like people process like certain things is like these mountain climbers when they're at like extreme like they're on the mountains, they're climbing, they're like at least typically it's like 6,000 meters, which is a lot. But they start hallucinating, and some people think that it's because of like them not having enough oxygen to their brain. But like some of the examples are like a lot of people okay, so it was like a study of like 8 different climbers, and a lot of them had hallucinations of like they're like alone climbing in the mountains, and it's like foggy and stuff. So they're like, it's kind of like the Gonsfield experiment where you're like not exposed to like sensory stimuli, but like basically what I was trying to get at here is like, do you think that like when you're fearful that you're gonna die, do you think that people hallucinate? Because typically one of the hallucinations was people hallucinating other people being with them. Like, do you think it's like a mechanism to like cope with it?
Yes, I have heard multiple stories like that, like where you almost died and you hear another voice, and a part of it could be, yeah, it could be that voice, whatever you're hearing or you imagine, it could be helping you either cope with it or maybe like helping you get out of the situation. Like the story about one kid that someone shot him with a shotgun like 3 times in the chest, and he fell down. The kid that shot him thought he was dead, and he ran away and got out of there, but it turned out the kid was still alive. And the kid that had two big holes in his body said that he suddenly heard his own voice screaming at him, telling him, like, get up, you need to get towards the street now, get up, move. And he said he could, like, physically feel hands, like, wrap around him and pick him up, and said that he heard a voice saying, like, come on, you're gonna die, don't close your eyes, keep your eyes open, keep moving, like, so, like, that voice was, like, whatever he was hearing, like, whatever it did, like, kept, like, pushed him to get, like, out in public, get, like, out by a street where a car actually stopped, saw him, called the police, got him medical attention, saved his life. But if it wasn't for, he said if it wasn't for him hearing that voice yelling at him, telling him, don't close your eyes, get up, you're dying, he said he probably would have just closed his eyes and he would have died right where he was. So
you think it's like a way of like your body trying to continue and make you survive and like get through the situation?
yeah.
And like it just like tries to make you keep going, so it just like makes you hallucinate that somebody else is telling you what to do, kind of.
Yeah, it could be something like that.
Because a lot of the times these people were alone, and then
But like other people that like are schizophrenic and hear voices in their head that tell them that they need to kill people and stuff like that, that's clearly something else. Like, I don't know what that is.
it's funny that you say that because I was reading about that, and it was talking about it was about hallucinations, but like it was talking about how schizophrenics, they'll hear other people's voices, but when they hear these voices, their muscles in their throat twitch. So it's like as if they're hearing their own voice as somebody else's voice.
Okay.
So like it makes me wonder, like maybe like in schizophrenia they're just not processing like maybe like their memory, I guess. Like you know how there's people who like can't recognize faces. Like I feel like it has to do something like that with like how like people can't, like schizophrenics, like I don't know, it's just hard to explain why like their throat would twitch when they're hearing somebody else's voice.
Especially if it's a consistent thing through all the cases.
I do know that people who are schizophrenic have schizophrenic episodes, they typically like, okay, so there's REM sleep, and like in REM sleep your eyes are like, you know, moving and stuff. So like their brain waves, I wonder if it's like similar to REM because they're in such like a dream like state. You know what I mean? Like, because I remember one of my professors in neuroscience class, he was talking about how, like, imagine if you were reenacting one of your dreams, but you're awake. Like, you would seem pretty crazy, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, I wonder, like, how, like, schizophrenia is related to, like, sleep. And, like...
I don't know. It could be like whatever chemical that is that's released when you're sleeping. Maybe they're just getting like maybe their brain is just releasing an abnormal amount of that when they're awake or something, and it could be a combination of something else.
Also, like, how, like, I guess, like, schizophrenia kind of relates to, like, sleep in a way. Like, I think people that are schizophrenic, they typically don't sleep as much.
Well, probably not, because schizophrenic people also are in, like, getting manic states. So when you're manic, you can't...
Your body won't let you sleep.
Yeah, you can't sleep.
But also, like, another thing, like, sleep paralysis. Like, when people, like, are awake, or, like, they wake up and they, like, can't move.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think that has to do with, like, schizophrenia? Like, in a way?
That's, like, pretty common, though. I feel like that's when you're when your brain wakes up, but your body is still asleep, and then it like, cause you're only in sleep paralysis for what? It's not very long. It's like a few seconds, whatever. If you're actually fighting to wake up, and it just takes a second for your body to actually wake up.
You know
That's
how
what it
like
seems like.
so you know how like when you're like in sleep paralysis, like like some people explain it like how I don't know, some people explain it as demonic, or like they think that like they're being like watched by a spirit or something.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one of the other things that we learned about was like exploding head syndrome. It's like when you like wake up suddenly because you hear a noise, or like
Mm-hmm.
it feels like your head is exploding. I've never had it, but like I feel like I've definitely been like interrupted in like sleep and like been woken up and thought like I heard something. I don't know. Have you ever had that?
Yeah, I have. I definitely been woken up thinking I just like heard a loud bang or something like that.
Yeah, that's actually like a like phenomenon that a lot of people like um experience, but it was related to sleep paralysis. But I wonder if like all these like sleep, cause like sleep, they everyone always emphasizes how important sleep is.
Mm-hmm.
Like I wonder if like I wonder how sleep and like all these disorders are related. Like hallucinations. Like I feel like sleep and hallucinations are just all related, and I feel like it's just like how your brain processes things. Like
Mm-hmm.
you know when you don't get enough sleep, and like you go to class and you like can't focus.
Oh yeah.
Like I know that like sleep and like disorders are just like really related. Like I feel like it just causes your brain to not be able to process information correctly.
Well, even like a totally healthy person, if they're awake for it's like what 72 hours, they start hallucinating hardcore.
Yeah, I've never tried that before. So